Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry for my casual appearance. I got an extra workout in because Kathleen and Joe said, "Hey, Craig, we'll do training for you tomorrow." And I said, "Fantastic." So I was on Zoom from 8:30 until 2:45 yesterday.
Yeah,
Literally,
we felt sorry for you.
I'd rather be driving.
it's not hard, but it's still hard, you know?
It's
Draining.
time consuming.
It's training. You got to pay attention and
Yeah.
so
And your
good stuff.
butt starts to hurt because you can't get
Yeah.
out of that chair.
I got a whoopee cushion under my butt. So I do. I got this little donut thing here.
Oh, that's great. That is funny. But you know what? That sucker works. I got one at home.
All right. So I sent a little note this morning to everybody saying, hey, the collapse of that Sunrise condominium in Miami has changed a lot of things. And the fact of the matter is we got a lot of aging buildings and our job is to protect the public. Right. So the FAR bar contract has been upgraded. New laws have been put in place for disclosure requirements and the condo rider has changed. So when Kathleen and Joe, they put together a summary, if you will, of all the important changes. And it's important that you know, because you never know what a buyer is going to buy. Right. And if they're looking for condos, we want to protect them. So I'm going to let Kathleen and Joe run the show. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make who wants to be a host so you could just end when it's over.
Joe, do it. That's
I'll
cool.
do it.
Joe, I'm going to put you as host
Okay.
so you control everything.
Yeah.
But you're both co-hosts, so both of you can share your screens to do whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And
Okay, now that he's leaving, we can really get to business. No, I'm just kidding.
so I'll be listening, but
We're just kidding. We're just kidding. It's almost
Cool.
Cinco de Mayo. We're in playful moods today.
yep. Happy Quattro de Mayo.
That's it.
That's right.
Cool.
That's
All right, I'll let you guys run the show. Educate,
right.
please. It's important, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Audience. All right. I am going to say no more camera. Bye.
Enjoy
Bye.
your day.
So
Good
good morning.
morning.
Kathleen. So these new changes, calamity always brings new laws, right? I mean, and obviously the collapse of the condo in Miami was very serious and brought out to light a lot of the deficiencies that were going on. So the law really has changed quite a bit of what is required of the seller
Mhm.
and ultimately us, because we're advising the seller, if we're helping them out doing this, we got to coach them through this because this is real. There's serious consequences to the seller if they do not disclose correctly. It's not just a oopsie. It could be thousands and thousands of dollars of penalties to them
Correct.
if they don't disclose correctly.
Mhm.
Did you have your PowerPoint?
I
There?
can share my screen. Sure.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up.
That was really good. And I thought we'd go through some of that because it highlights everything. And then we'll show that everybody that we developed a condo checklist to help everybody make sure they have the right documents. And then we'll have that uploaded. I'll get Ange to upload that into Dotloop.
Yeah, let me know if you can see this. Can you see the 2023 condo updates?
Yes, I can see that.
All right, let me make this a little bit bigger.
Because I thought you did an excellent job on this.
Well, I wasn't alone. I had laws, materials, and I had you.
Yes.
If I can't have you, I don't want nobody, baby. There we go.
There you
There
go.
we go. And if we don't have disclosures, not only is it the seller that's going to be in the soup, but we have a responsibility to make sure these things are current as well.
Right.
Now, most folks have probably seen, if not used, these condo riders, but if you haven't seen it, let me move this out of the way. There we go. Put our cute little faces over there. This is in Dotloop. The A condo rider, it's going to look the same when you first look at it. It's when you get over to pages 2 and 3. We're going to jump into this because these are very important paragraphs, both in pages 2 and 3, not only for our own use as far as disclosure, but making sure our buyers understand and what their rights are. Making sure the sellers understand what they need to disclose.
And what happens if they don't?
Uh-huh.
And I want to bring up one thing, Kathleen, which we talked about yesterday. If you have a current condo listed and you haven't used this disclosure, you need to go back and do this disclosure. It's very important. If this disclosure became effective on March 20th, but if you listed something prior to that, you need to go back and redisclose on this disclosure.
And you may have co-brokes that are, either MIA or don't have a brain in their heads, or just for whatever reason, don't check carefully to make sure they have the most current doc in there for condo docs. And if they don't hesitate to send one over blank, make them fill it out, send it back to your buyer.
Yeah.
And review it, make sure they filled it out, make sure that, what we need is in there. Because again, we've got to make sure everybody's on the same page, and, nobody teaches as well as we do. Of course, it's not just us doing this, but we do. Joe and I have both worked for other brokerages. We know the difference. That's why we're here. So you'll see, and we'll make sure that we send this out after the class 2, new requirements of laws. This was passed by the state legislature. I swear I can't talk in the morning because of Champlain Towers. And particularly we start with paragraph 3, section C, part 1, which gives us the new requirements in addition to the studies, which we'll get into.
Right.
But as Joe said so well, when you're listing a condo, you want to make sure you get a couple of things. We're going to make sure that we have this most current rider disclosure. We need the last 12 minutes of the board minutes prior to the effective date. And work with your seller to make sure there has been no other discussion or mention or agenda or meeting minutes about special assessments. Now, not all sellers are going to be as engaged as others, but we have to ask these questions. And Joe, I'm sorry, you were going to jump in.
No, well, I was just going to say the key word in there is 12 months prior to the effective date.
Right.
So if you list something in May, on May 10th, and but don't sell it till August, obviously what we're going to ask you to do is you got to get 12 months from the time you list it.
Yep.
You want to make sure that there's been no mention of an assessment, and you got to help the seller. The seller has to disclose, but we're going to have to guide them through this a little bit. But you're going to have to keep updated every month that you have that listing on to make sure you get the most current minutes, because you've got to give this buyer the last 12 months from the effective date. So this is a little more onus on the seller and us to keep our documents updated.
Put an update on your calendar, a reminder every 30 days, like everything else we put on our calendars for meetings, closings, inspections, appraisals. This is one more thing we're going to put in there, and we're going to be seeing more and more condo listings. I know I'm seeing them over here a lot more than we did 6 months ago. So this is here to stay. It's not going away.
No, and the big thing is the next box to the right there that we're talking, the seller's required to disclose the special assessments. That's in that little box, which we'll show you. If there were any, the seller doesn't disclose them, the seller is going to be responsible to pay them at closing.
Right.
Now, with this new law, every condominium has to go through an assessment of their reserves. And so I went to a condo HOA meeting last week. It was at the convention center, and actually met the guy who helped write some of this law. And it's pretty serious. I mean, they have a whole software program now that will help the condominiums figure out if they're, have enough in their reserves, and if they don't, how they go about. But you can get an additional assessment of $3 or $4 grand just to help catch up
And
in
more.
dues, or more. It could be $30,000 or $40,000 in some of these condos that have not budgeted. There's a couple of condos on Bayshore Boulevard that just love to do special assessments. They don't collect enough in their dues because they have a lot of people that own condos as investments, so they don't want high monthly fees. That's Pepper. He's saying hello, and so that's what we're going to have to figure out. All right, buddy. I don't know what he's barking at. So,
And our CAM managers are just as much responsible. And there's a lot of CAM managers out there that are not real good on understanding the impact of these laws. Luckily, over here in Sarasota, most of the CAMs that I'm familiar with or worked with or done pro bono work with have been very, very, oh, Joe disappeared. Have been very good about staying current, but don't hesitate as a real estate leader in your community to reach out to your own boards, reach out to your community association managers and get to know them better and help them put this in front of them. And if they're not, understanding it, have a guest speaker come in and talk to them. I will tell you, it really is helpful. I've spoken already to 4 different condominium associations with this presentation just to help them get up to speed. One that I was a former president of before I sold my unit, because I really care about the community, and it's literally 2 blocks away from this office downtown. So it was very helpful for them to be able to see it, go through it, and actually have an opportunity to ask questions. So this is something else that makes us so important as real estate professionals to be able to help not only our sellers, but the communities where we live. If we live in a condo association community, this is something that we need to talk to them about if they don't already have somebody doing it, speaking to them about it. Because a lot of them don't. They don't know where to start.
no, and it's going to be pretty expensive on these condominium because they have to get inspections and they have to get assessments on their condo fees, and all this is additional monies that is going to have to happen.
And absentee owners are going to be somewhat dismayed by it. But again, the cost of doing business, the cost of maintaining a condominium community is not ordinary. It's not an ordinary expense. It offers so much in the way of convenience, free, easy lifestyle living, if you will. It's part of Florida lifestyle, and you got to pay for it. It's part of the package, if you will. Now, this is just a brief copy of what the changes are, the red line changes before it went into print. And again, we're going to send this out after the class. We're going to be talking about these different changes. And we also want to make sure, this is important too, and we just updated Loop with it, the governance form, the disclosure from Tallahassee, the condo disclosure, mobile homes and cooperatives. That disclosure has also been updated, and that's been changed into the Loop. So thank you for Ange for getting that in there. Rider A, like we talked about, this applies sales and purchase, condominium associations, as well as your cooperative sales. And of course, a cooperative is much like what we would call a share. You're getting a share out of a corporation. You're getting the inside walls, if you will. It looks just like a condo. It's just a cooperative. And if people are interested in possibly having a cooperative class, we can go over that sometime too, because the docs are a little different. The share certificates are a little different at closing. I don't want to get off on that tangent, but just wanted to throw that suggestion out there in case anybody wanted to. Now, we've talked about part 1 and how important it is to get those minutes of any special assessments, to keep our seller up to date as well as ourselves with the condo disclosure and checking in monthly to make sure we have updated minutes. Part 2 goes into, and if you want, Joe, if you want to start with that green block.
Right. So the language informs the buyers that they have access to these 2 new documents. And this is where it's imperative that at the time we are taking that listing to get these documents and have them ready, because they have 3 days to look at them. So you don't want a point where you're 10 days into the contract and you still have a loophole for the buyer to get out of the contract. So you want to try to have these documents ready so that during their inspection period, they're reviewing these documents, that you're not giving them additional time to cancel out on that. And whoop, now I got to move my little picture because I can't read the green one. There we go.
Hi, Pepper.
Yeah. The first is the inspection. Okay, so they need now. Most of these condos are not going to have all this right yet, because they have until the end of 2024 to have these. But these are questions that we need to ask them. Has the inspection been done? and there's 2 inspections. There's a visual, and then if there's something wrong, then they actually have to do a more intensive structural and integrity
Engineer.
inspection.
Yep.
Yeah. So the first thing is that they're going to come in and they're going to do a visual inspection of the building and give it either an all clear or here's deficiencies that is going to have to happen. And then they have to have the section structural integrity done, so that they will have to have another more thorough inspection. And the second is the structural integrity reserve study. And this is what we were talking about, which could cause a lot of assessments. They have to have someone come in, a third party, and do the structural analysis for them.
And that's when it comes into our milestone inspection and structural integrity reserve study. They have abbreviations for all of that, but I'm trying to stay away from that because nobody wants to hear that. Those abbreviations, just like legal jargon, that drives me crazy. We just want to speak English, right?
Exactly.
The milestone inspection and structural integrity reserve, as Joe was talking about, the first part, milestone, is structural, conducted for life safety purposes. This is a requirement for the associations to obtain. A milestone inspection applies to condominiums, cooperative buildings 3 stories or higher, which have been occupied 30 years or more, or if located within 3 miles of Florida's coastline and occupied 25 years or more. And that's key because we have a lot of properties both here, Tampa. I know Tampa with the Bay Shore. There's tons of them along there, just like us in Sarasota downtown, right? The structural integrity reserve study is a study, as Joe had mentioned, reserve funds required for the future major repairs and replacement of the common areas. That includes garages, under the underground garages, under the building garages, the buildings themselves, anything that are structures 3 stories or higher. Now I haven't seen anything in writing yet from the governor's office about it changing to 2 stories or lower or 1 story or lower. I know those questions have come out, but we'd have to check the governor's site where bills are being proposed and passed. That's easy to check from time to time, but for now, this is what we have to work with. And this is where we'll help our sellers and our buyers from contract to closing.
This is where this is where we were talking about to the right here, the phase 1 mandatory visual inspection for
Yes.
safety. And this will have to happen. These are going to be happening right away. And if there's anything that is seen that is in deficiency, then they'll have to have a further, more physical, and they call it destructive testing, as they go and chisel walls and see the integrity of it and all that good stuff.
Sure.
And then they have they have to have the repairs done by the end of 25.
Correct.
So this is moving quite quickly. This is not like meandering through the lazy river here. It's, and part of it is having enough engineers to actually, you have to be certified to be able to do this. So that's why they gave them 2 years to do this.
Yes, and they are getting more engineers to areas all over Florida. There are more engineers getting involved with this because for so many years, condos were built very close to the shoreline, 25, 30 plus years ago. And what happens? Rebar from salt air and salt water, concrete, all that starts to deteriorate. You start seeing puddles of water in the garages all over the place. You start seeing cracks and other things that engineers would be most concerned about. So with that being said, that's what's prompted all this, because what happened with Champlain Towers was deferred maintenance, according to the news media, not according to Kathy's source of nowhere. Of course, the public, whatever public means that we have so far that has been disclosed. And for that reason, the salt air and just years and years of deterioration and fighting between the association and the city of who's going to be responsible for what. Well, this law is going to eliminate no more of this. We're not going to say it's you. No, things are going to get done. This is a good directive. It's something that was long overdue. It was a tragedy with Champlain Towers. I have friends down there who lost family members, not directly related to me, but friends of friends. And I had other friends that had sold and thankfully got out of there before that happened. So this is something that's very serious. Lives were lost and we don't want to have this happen again.
Don't want to read on the newspaper that's one of my clients. And it was in a building collapse. Don't want to do
Oh
that.
my God. Yeah, yeah, because that was a very popular area.
Mhm.
Miami Vice used to film down there. I knew people that were actors down there, so I know the history about this place.
Mhm.
And the deadline 12/31/2024. So like Joe was saying, that you're not gonna be dragging feet. It's not gonna be getting to it when they feel like it. They have to do it. It's a directive.
So this is why we're telling you, because during the next, what, 18, 19 months, all these condos are going to have to be doing these studies. So you've got to ask the question, has it been done? Because it needs to be disclosed to the buyer that it's been done.
Absolutely. And the SURS study, that's the reserve study that we were talking about. That's
Mhm.
the second part of this piece. Condo associations are required to obtain 2 reports by December 31, 2024, with the milestone report, the structural integrity reserve study report. And why is this important? Buyers of certain condos are entitled to these reports. This rider was revised to accommodate that, to make sure that the repairs and reserves are what they have been done or what should be done, and to make sure that the condo reserves are indeed healthy.
You know, and a lot of this has to do with being transparent. You know, a lot of people buying condos are out of state and they don't always understand the significance of some of the issues living along the coast are, other than
Absolutely.
hurricanes,
No, they
other than
don't.
everything. Yeah.
They don't understand the cost of insurance, because some states, I mean, if you go to Boise, Idaho, are you gonna be on the ocean front with salt and sea? I don't think so. There's a lot of corn up in that area. If you're in Wyoming, we're gonna be looking cows and cattle and that sort of thing, and lots of mountains. Again, it's so geographically significant, so that when buyers from out of state, even from the Midwest, they're totally unfamiliar. All the more reason why we got to be very, very diligent about our disclosure.
So
And
one of the things I found out last week at this conference that I went to, the structural integrity reserve study that they're doing, they will be, it's not like they say, for instance, the roof needs to be replaced in 10 years and there's not enough funds in the reserve. They can space the addition. In other words, they don't have to charge everybody 1 year. They can space that out over the 10 years.
graduated.
That will
Yes.
affect what the current condo fee will be. In other words, it might
Right.
raise it $3,000. They need to collect, 30 grand over the next 10 years. So every year it's, an additional $3,000 for the roof and stuff like that.
Yes.
But, and with these structural integrity, they also include a factor for inflation and stuff like that. So it's not just today a roof costs $30,000. I know that's not really true for a condo, but simple numbers.
Yeah.
But in 10 years, it might be $40,000 or so. So they calculate the inflation in all that, and at least try to do that. So it's not going to be like a total panic. Like, in other words, we've got to make it all up in 1 year.
No, it's
We
graduated.
space it out over the 10 years, but it will impact the fees for the condo, period.
Sure, sure. Those incremented assessments that'll be raised each year. And
Mhm.
again, that'll be mentioned in the meeting minutes, because the board has to vote on these things. So that's where those meeting minutes are critical to get your hands on. And the other thing about this is buyers of some condos, after entering into a contract, are entitled to a summary of the milestone inspection report and the SURS report, if those reports exist. Now, see, we're not to 2024 yet, so it may not exist. And if it doesn't, we get a statement indicating that it's not been completed. If the report does exist, then they are entitled to those reports.
Mhm. You can't give them something that it doesn't exist yet.
Of course, and again, yeah, we're not in 2024 yet, so some may or may not have been done. And this is not to say all condos are going to have issues, not necessarily. You've got a good community association manager. I'll get away from the abbreviations. CAM is what they call it. But if you've got a good one that stays on top of these things, and you've got a good board that stays on top of these things, more likely than not, when they do have, if these buildings are meeting the criteria of required studies and so forth, then it should go like smooth sailing. It's for the associations that haven't taken good care of their property as they should, like we saw with the most recent collapse in Miami. And if the association is not, or the funds are not being properly placed into the proper accounts, and you start seeing commingling, those are other issues that pop up when you have a poorly run board. Now, this is a really good section as well. What's covered when we talk about the inspection of the milestone inspection and the summary. The whole report is not given to the buyer, just the law requires a summary to be provided, which will contain material findings and recommendations of the report. So what is that? Roof, primary structural items, load-bearing walls, floor, foundation, plumbing, electrical, fireproofing, those walls separating from each condo little box, waterproofing, windows, and items where deferred maintenance expense exceeds $10,000. That could happen really easy.
Yeah.
The study also includes the estimated remaining useful life and estimated replacement cost of the deferred expense of the common areas being visually inspected. It provides recommended annual reserve amounts. So this keeps everything in check.
Mhm.
The buyer will get
Things that aren't covered are things like pools and landscaping and stuff like that. That's not covered under this law.
no, exactly. That's a really good point. What the buyer does get is a copy of the SERS report, association required to complete one and has a completed one. And if it's not been completed, the buyer is entitled to a statement that the association has not completed it. Let me move our cute little faces over here. Penalties. This is where damages and so forth will come in if compliance is not sought. Joe, you want to go through that section? That would be great.
Sure. If the association fails to complete the structural integrity report, such as failure is a breach of the officers and the director's fiduciary relationship to the unit owners, that's a pretty powerful statement, fiduciary responsibility. So if its officers and directors of the association willfully and knowingly fail to have a milestone inspection performed, such failure is a breach of the officers and directors fiduciary relationship to the units. CAMs also have the responsibility to the obtaining the report. However, the current statute is silent as to consequence to the parties. The buyers do not receive the SERS statement of this and the summary. So, legislation, there's some legislation proposed changing some of this already. So
Yes, there is.
yeah. So,
I think that's a week in that right there.
but you're the attorney, Kathleen. When you start talking fiduciary responsibility, that's a pretty powerful statement to allow people to sue.
It is, and it's a very, very significant position to be a director or on a board for a condo association, and taking on the responsibilities and understanding you have the fiduciary responsibility to your association, to their owners, to make sure you're following the rules of law, you're following your responsibility, you're not mixing repairs and other reserves together, you're not misapplying the dues that come in, and you're not ignoring the fact that there are dues that are required to be paid and just allowing people to go any way they want to in the way of paying them. Because if you get into a habit of deferring this and deferring that, they call that acquiescence under the law. Like, let's say you have a condo association that doesn't allow renters, but all of a sudden you got a condo full of renters and you continue to let it go on and let it go on, let it go on. Well, you're going to have some selective enforcement issues pop up. That's a whole nother category. And you're going to have issues in law for that. And enforcement's going to be difficult. It's the same thing with your fiduciary relationships to your owners and to the board. You have a duty to make sure you follow out the rules and your responsibilities as a director, as a treasurer, as a secretary, whatever your position is on that board. It's not to be taken lightly, because if you willfully breach and if you go outside the duties and willfully neglect, you are not going to be insulated from being sued. There's a huge difference between the business judgment rule, which allows you to make business decisions, and negligence. So that's where fiduciary duty is so important. And you
Your
have,
note, the note here is very important because
yes,
this report is not just for condos over 30 years. It's for any condo existing before July 1st, 2022. So as of last summer, right?
that's right. Yes,
So they all have to get this report done. It's not just the over 30 years. So I just want everybody to be aware that while we're talking buildings that are over 25 and 30 years, this particular report is for all condo buildings.
yeah. Yeah, because the legislature stepped in, saw what happened with Champlain Towers, realized it shouldn't have happened, and we want to stop the finger pointing on who's supposed to do what. This very much spells it out, the responsibilities, both as for the board and your CAM, your community association managers. So that's where it's very important who you're selecting for your CAM association managers. Don't go with selection of them just because they're cheap or they seem like they have a good deal, because again, it's a lot more responsibility on them as well as the board to work hand in hand and make sure these rules, the law is followed. And the buyer entitlement recap is a really good one. The buyers are entitled to the summary of the milestone inspection, not every single page. If an association is required to obtain the inspection and has the summary, buyer gets the summary. If the association is required to obtain the inspection, but has not yet received the summary, buyer gets nothing. The Structural Integrity Reserve Study, which is the abbreviation SIRS, if the association is required to get one and has done so, buyer gets it. If association is required to complete a SIRS but hasn't, buyer gets a statement from the seller. And that's where the disclosure comes in. It's so key. I mean, it's just critical to make sure we do that.
You know, it's really, I'm glad they're doing this, because you and I could get a summary of the building's expenses. I have no idea whether that's enough money in the reserve to cover things. I mean, you and I could guess, but we don't know the age of anything, right? So this really, by getting this SIRS done by a professional person, it really does put the onus and the expertise on someone who actually can speak to it.
Yeah, it's statutorily required. And if sellers have a hard time understanding how to get copies of reports, or if they're getting pushback, they have a right to make a request of the records at the association office. They have every right to make that written request, and then the association can provide the records, and the seller can literally just stand there with a scanner if need be, or their phone if they have one on there, and make copies of such if the association isn't giving it to them when that request is being made. But every condo owner has a right to make that request. It just has to show the business purpose of what the record request is for. It can't say, I want to know who you had dinner with last night. That's not a business request. And I'm being funny, but it has to be specific. I don't see where there's going to be an issue with association managers resisting that, because it is law and they can't skirt it. But as you and I know, there are some associations that can be very difficult to get record requests or to get the records they need, or sellers don't know how to go about doing it, or they're not tech savvy, and we'll step in and help them. A lot of associations are going to be putting this on their websites with a access code for the sellers to be able to obtain it, which that'll make it easier for sellers to be able to obtain those. And if they don't know how to do it, they can let us get in there. But we prefer the sellers just to go in there and do it, because it's their property and it's their access code.
Right.
There's different ways that they can make those requests if they're not sure, or if they don't know how to have access.
All right, so I'm going to pull up this Word document that we put together, and just
This checklist, Joe, you did a great job on this, because it's something we can pop in our files, have handy, and we won't mess up, because we all like to have that. I like to call it Linus blanket. I want to have my blankie, so I want to have it to make sure I'm okay and I got everything done.
All right, I'm sharing. Hopefully, can you see that?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, good. All right. Let me.
Sorry, allergies.
That's okay. So, all right. Trying to pull it down a little bit so I can read it. All right, there we go. All right, so what I put on here is due to the passage of this Florida Structural and Safety Law 2022, the seller must disclose on the condo rider in paragraph 3, section C, that the seller must disclose a special assessment of any other assessment that has been levied by the association or has been an item on the agenda or reported in the minutes within the last 12 months of the effective date. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
And it includes like everything. And when someone starts talking about an item, an agenda item, or, you know, or has been talked about, I mean, I'm president of my HOA association. We have our board meetings. I mean, that's pretty, you know, detailed on what these minutes are going to cover and what has to be disclosed and not disclosed.
And
So-
staying on the agenda is always fun because people want to divert and go off the agenda. And we have to remind, no, we have to stay on the agenda.
Right. Well, that's why you create them, to keep the meeting in order. So,
Right. That's right.
so paragraph 3 covers fees, assessments, prorations, and litigation, and the assessment, special assessment prorations. So I put these little things. So we need to gather the last 12 months of minutes from the association prior to the listing, and 2 minutes, monthly minutes after the listing takes effect.
Good point.
So this is really important, because obviously when it goes under contract, we want to be able to supply these to the buyer right away and not wait to do that. And because they get 3 days to look at all the documents and all this stuff. So we want to be able to make sure we stay in contract. Litigation, any and pending or anticipated litigation. Now, sometimes this is really hard because associations really don't want to tell you this in the past. So I'm hoping that this law requires them to tell us this.
Well, under the frequently asked questions answer sheet that lenders are going to ask for, that questions that's on there of the ones that I've seen for the frequently asked question sheet. And these are all things that the lender is going to be looking for because they want to know, is the pool about to pop out of the ground because when it was put in there was done wrong? Is it going to cost the owners, you know, an extra 10 grand a piece, you know, for common area assessment, those kind of things. And that comes up a lot on these multi-units. I've seen it several times over the years in different parts of Tampa. I've seen it in Clearwater with pool issues over and over and over again.
Yep.
Anticipated litigation, it's there. And then sometimes the attorneys for the association or for the board are squirrely about wanting to tell you, being forthright. And they've learned, you better let us know. Is if we find out and you are telling someone not to disclose, there's an issue there.
Yep.
Multiple layers of it.
So in paragraph 5 on the addendum, non-developer disclosures, these are the documents that we need to collect. All right, so we need the declaration of condominium, the amendments, articles of incorporation, the bylaws, and the rules of the association. This is very similar to what we've done before, right? Copy of the most recent year's financial information budget, frequently asked questions and answers document, copy of the insurance declaration page, and the buyer's application if there is one, right? So these are the things that we need to collect and have available, so when the unit does go under contract, that we have them to be able to immediately give to the buyer. And how do we get these? The seller has access to all these.
Exactly. Now, sometimes the seller won't have access to the insurance deck page and the buyer application. That's where the association manager will have it. And we added a couple things in here because we know lenders are going to ask for these things. And sometimes the insurance declaration page, the association will resist giving it to us because the contract between the association and the insured is between them, and we're a third party requesting it. So we have to get the release and the permission from the association, CAM association, if they don't already have one on hand, to release it to us. Usually that'll be emails back and forth. I'm starting to see that finally being more cooperative, but I can remember years back, like when I first started working with condos, it was like begging for a piece of bread
Right.
to get that. And our lenders need it. And or they make you trot on down to the office and stand there and wait for it. Thankfully, they're becoming much more tech savvy, and we're not having to make all these drives all over town to association offices that are only open from 12 to 2, that sort of thing.
Right. So in paragraph 10 in the addendum, this is a governance forums, milestone inspection report, structural integrity reserve study. So the governance form, this is where the seller has copy of we need the seller's copy of the governance form. And then we're to the milestone inspection and report summary. And then I put some things in there to help us. Okay, so buildings with certificates of occupancy before July 1st, 1992 must complete the inspection before December 31st, 2024. That being said, if it's not been done yet, we can't give it. But after 2024, they should have it. But we've got to ask for it if it's available. And then buildings within 3 miles of the coastline and had COs before July 1st, 1997 must have the inspection done by December 31st, 2024. And then some condos will have this done, others may not yet. So just as a note. And if this report has been delivered to the association, the report needs to be available to the buyer. And
Correct.
these are also supposed to be posted, okay, somewhere in the condo. Now, I don't know where, in an conspicuous area, but they're supposed to be posted.
And a lot of condo associations will have a little box by the mailboxes where they put updates and
Right.
things like that. But your
Boards, yeah.
bulletin boards, but your community associations more often now have websites where you can click on and you can get various reports. And you always also want to make sure that if amendments are on their way, about to be filed, that haven't been filed yet, those are things to make sure you get from the community association manager. All your association docs are filed in public record. However, for some of the really old condo associations or buildings, some of them may not be readily accessible because it's been archived or it's put in a microfiche and it's harder to get a hold of. All the more reason why to have that discussion with your seller to get a copy of what they have, copy of amendments that they have, and then double check with the association. Are there other amendments on the way coming down the pipe? Did you just file something yesterday or the day before? With electronic filing, it's much easier and faster now than it used to be. But I always double check those things because sometimes there's amendments in the works and it hasn't hit the public domain yet because they're in the route to do it. So I ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, Lauren mentioned, she said, as a practice, I always upload the HOA condo documents to .loop. And by all means, we can upload these. I don't think I would upload the minutes because they are kind of private things between the condo. They don't normally like to get them out. I think I would only give them once we have a buyer, once we're under contract.
Yeah, I'd have copies of everything ready to go in my .loop.
Right.
And then if the HOA docs are readily available on a web link, provide the web link.
Right.
Always want to be careful with liability to us on what kind of HOA docs we put in the MLS, because if we miss something or we omit something and it's deferred to us down the road, there's something that's come up that was significant and the buyer didn't know. The buyer's agent, let's say we're the listing agent, the buyer's agent can say, well, we got it off the MLS, we got it from them. So, it's always on the onus of the buyer and buyer's agent to obtain the additional documentation that they need. I would have that in the disclosure on your listings to make sure that we don't want the liability falling on us, because it could happen. We could overlook something and not even know it. As a courtesy, we could certainly provide what we have, but the link to the association, in my opinion, it insulates us because it puts the onus on them to go to the link, go get what they need, and then reach out to the CAM people.
Yep. We'll have this, I'll be giving this document to Angelique to upload into .loop, so it'll be there. It'll be called Condo Checklist. So
Yeah.
keep it simple, stupid, right?
Right. And I give everything I can get my hands on to my buyers when we're looking at, 2 or 3 units, and we narrow it down, I make sure they have access to all of that ahead of time, before we even go see the unit, so they can review it in case there's some crazy restriction. Let's say that, this particular association doesn't allow parakeets. Well, if I've got a bird, that's a problem, you know? Or it'll be something like you could only have 1 dog, and let's say you have 2 dogs. I mean, those things may not sound important, but they are, because your pets are your fid children, if you will, your furry children. So by providing, it may not sound significant, but it truly is. Other restrictions, different types of vehicles. What if you only get 1 space per unit and a guest space? Well, you can't use the guest space 24/7. There'll be all kinds of restrictions on that. What if you have 3 cars? Where are you going to put that 3rd car? All these things matter. So I like to be overly prepared, give my buyers ahead of time everything I can get my hands on prior to seeing that unit. Because this way, if they say, oh, wait a minute, this has got a bunch of restrictions I can't live with. All right, we take that off the list. Now we're down to the next 2. We haven't wasted anybody's time.
Sarah says, is there any difference for single family home style homes that are on the tax record state it's a condo? Not really, go ahead, Kat.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is when you're looking at your single family homes, you go to the deed, and the deed language controls. The deed will say a condominium, or let's say it's a condominium that looks like a townhouse, but it's a condominium. I owned one of those. It was very tricky. First time I saw it, I went, this is weird. Isn't this a townhouse? No, it's not. It's a condo. It's a condo.
The style is townhome, right?
The style is townhome, exactly. But I pull the deeds. Always get into the habit of pulling the deeds so you know exactly what your buyers are getting into. Because this becomes really important. Let's say you're using an FHA or VA loan. A lot of condos are not available on the FHA VA loan. And I know for certain, the majority, if not all, VA loans, they're not going to let you get into a condo. They don't want to loan on the walls. They want an actual, the roof and everything. A townhouse, they will.
Remember, in a condo, you don't own the land underneath the building. Okay, it's not in fee. The land is owned by the association.
Correct. That's perfectly explained. Yes, there will not be a fee. They're absolutely right. That's why you don't need a survey. Now with townhouses, now that gets tricky. With townhouses, however, some townhouses, you do get the land with it. It might be a little bit of postage stamp, or others, it's just what's underneath the building, just like a condo. But it's when it comes to townhouses, it can be a little tricky. So
in the actual legal description, it will say condo, right? If it's a condo, that means it's not in fee. In other words, they don't own the land, and that's a whole nother topic on financing. Okay, because there's a whole different financing for condos than there is for in fee properties.
Own the air between the walls. That's a good one.
That's it. That's it. Okay,
just
trying to read through some questions. Someone, Mike says under the air between the walls. That's right.
Yeah.
That is correct. All right. So the last thing here, number C, the structural integrity reserve survey, the SARS, if available, and that's really what we have to say right now. If available, the seller needs to provide a copy of this and the most structural integrity reserve study. So until 24, it's kind of a no man's land, right? And the end of 24, but we need to ask, and we need to have a statement that it is not available.
Yep, that's where you'll indicate it on the condo rider. The second page, I believe there's a blank spot, second or third page. There's a blank spot for that, and we'll send a copy of this out to you, to everybody, so you can have it. I like to call it as my little Linus blanket, my little cheat sheet. It's just like when you're first learning contracts, what do? You print a copy of the regular contract and the copy of the as is, and you keep it handy in your little file folders on your desk, and you look, and then your managers are so nice to take another eyeball look at it to make sure you got everything done.
Right.
Same thing with this. Let us help you. Let us take a second look before you submit this over.
The penalty, and we haven't talked about them, but there are penalties.
Oh yeah.
So if there has been discussion of an assessment and it says it's going to be $20,000 and the seller does not disclose that and the buyer becomes aware of that, the seller will have to pay that at
Right.
closing. So that's why this is really important that, and because the onus is the seller will say, "Well, my agent didn't tell me."
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's all,
We
yeah.
all have broad
yeah.
shoulders, right? I mean, it
Sure.
comes back to
They
us.
start doing this.
Uh-huh. So we don't want to be pulled in that loop. So
No.
I know, and what I'm going to do personally is I'm, you know, until I get all these things, I'm not going to list the property.
No.
All right, because I need to have them all. Now that's, you know,
Correct. That's right.
because you know how hard it is to chase something down. You put the house on you put the condo on the market, it goes under contract in 2 days. Now you got to chase all this stuff
Oh.
down. Okay.
I don't
And
work like that.
no, I don't either. And meanwhile, you know, the clock is ticking. All right. And,
Yeah.
and you're extending the buyer's ability to cancel this contract out until you get them these documents. So,
And we won't depend on errors and omission to save us because depending on the fallout of future litigation as it comes up, I could easily see a court construing that as gross negligence. I
mm,
can easily see that. So we
okay.
don't have to pop this stuff on the MLS. We don't, because we have that due diligence on our side to make sure that we're providing the necessary documentation through the seller. And we can easily get a form that would keep it out of the MLS. We have that and defer putting it in the MLS until they provide us all that documentation. Yeah, you can get that listing and have that defer, you know, that form that we use, MLS exclusion,
Right.
with the date when it's going to go live, and give that seller the time that's needed to get us what we need. Because they're our partners, they have to work with us.
It's really no different than going to a single family home and they need 2 weeks to spruce it up to get it ready on the market. So we'll use the MLS exclusion form for the same reason of this, is
Absolutely.
until we get all the documents and stuff.
Yep, be over prepared and you'll thank us in the morning.
Yeah.
Because it makes everything smooth sailing. I know we all get excited when we get the listings. We want to get it done yesterday. We want those photos out. But remember, we as single agents also have duties to our sellers to make sure that we are doing everything competently, diligently, representation. So this is part of it. This is part of the duties, making sure that we put our foot down, say, no, we need this and this and this. Because you're going to have some sellers that are very, very strong-willed, and for whatever reason, they want things their way or the highway. Well, you know, we all have a response to that. People in hell want ice water too.
Yeah. I guess I don't know if there's any other questions. If anybody wants to pop in and chat, you know, hit us on the chat if they have questions, if we need clarification of what we said, because Kathleen and I have read these documents 90 times by now. So.
Well, Gigi makes a good comment, and
There you go. Oh.
we could easily have a class on how to find those docs with clerk of court. I'm the queen of research over here. If anybody ever has questions, I can easily show you how to navigate to get that from the clerk of court. Gigi, that's a really good point, because there's management companies that don't always have the complete records of governing documents, especially when they've changed over from one company to another. And that's frequent with condos. You see sometimes 3, 4, 5 different CAMs issues come up, or the association doesn't want to pay the increased fees, their contracts expire, they don't want to renew them. So there's going to be multiple CAMs. And when the documents are handed off from one CAM association manager to the next, it could totally be incomplete. You're absolutely right. That's a great point. I've experienced that as an association president. I remember getting new CAMs in, and the old CAMs, it was a mess. And thank you for bringing that up, because the clerk of court does have all the official records for the amendments, particularly because they're going to be the most recent docs. And there's a way to backtrack and find those. So if anybody ever wants a class one-on-one, we can easily do that. I can walk you through it. Same thing with getting the deed, the docs, all that stuff. And one more thing on this point too, this is something that's come up a lot in conversation with listings. When you have a listing appointment, and it's someone who's insisting on getting it listed yesterday, and you see on the deed, it says a married man or a married woman, but there's only one person in front of you, you need to ask, where's the spouse? And if the spouse has passed, you need a copy of that death certificate. We've had some scammers come through. All the offices are getting hit with this, where people will come in with passports that are even fake from Canada. That's my favorite. And it was clearly photoshopped. Our title company did a really good job of walking one of our agents through it. Megan did an outstanding job, and it turned the whole thing was a fake. When the gentleman was asked, and I'm being nice calling him that, we need to have your spouse present. Oh no, I'm married. She doesn't need to be here. Well, on Florida, your spouse has
do.
equitable interest, and
Yes.
they do need to sign off on that listing agreement, and they need to sign off at closing. Yes, they do. It doesn't matter if she's not or he's not on that deed. Florida
right.
protects us, spouses. So that's a little gold nugget of information. We had lots of nuggets today. That's why we like
Yes.
doing these classes. That's why these meetings are important. We don't want to just, sit here and look cute and waste your time. This is all about getting you as much education as possible, or as I like to say, more seeds for the garden, because we like to grow.
This is one of those things where you sit down with, and you're at a listing appointment and with a condo person, and you start asking these questions. They're going to see how professional you are, probably compared to somebody else.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I've had sellers say this over and over again. You were the only one that came to our appointment prepared. You have a copy of the deed. You have a copy of the docs. You have a copy of our association fees. You know about the community. And I just give them a nice big stack. And I smile. I'm like, okay, this is your homework. No, I'm just kidding. So I just start chatting it up that way after, we had a chance to talk about why you want to sell, and take a look at, do your preview when you come back at the listing appointment. And I have that nice big stack. They're like, wow, you did all that. I'm like, yes, you need to know, this is what I have. I need to know if you have any supplements to this. Is there any other additional information you have that you can provide, floor plans, that sort of thing. You'll always win the listing by being over prepared. That's what they're looking for. Hands down. Hands down.
And Sharon said, great job. Sharon, welcome back.
Hey, welcome back, Sharon.
So,
wow. Well,
anyway, Kathleen,
we had fun.
I think that's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today. That was fun.
Thank you for putting together this really nice checklist. I think the collaborative effort was really good. And we snuck in some extra things so you can have it as a checklist. It's because there's lots of things the lender's going to ask for. Why not go try to get it ahead of time when you know you're using a loan? Or even if you're not, let's get as much as we can up front. Right?
Right.
Be prepared. You won't fail.
All right, everyone, have a great day and a great weekend coming up.
Cinco de Mayo. Wow.
Sell some homes.
Homes and salsa. Yeah, we like that.
All right.
Have a taco open house. Taco Friday.
Talk to you later.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.